Iranian state media reported fresh explosions in Tehran in the early hours of this morning, and this follows warnings from Israel for residents of the northeastern parts of the city to evacuate. But for more on the latest developments in the conflict between Israel and Iran, we speak now to SABC News International editor Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, good morning. And perhaps let's just start with the G7 leaders calling for de-escalation in the Middle East. But of course, U.S. President Donald Trump not prepared to put pen to paper in order to make this official, so to speak.
You are correct, Sakina. Yesterday, President Trump didn't sign the statement saying that the Iranian authorities should have negotiated the nuclear deal long time ago, and this could have led to a situation where this conflict wouldn't have arisen. But we know that Israel was adamant that it was going to attack the nuclear sites of Iran because they are saying that it is a security threat, or they are a security threat to the existence of Israel as a state. And therefore, for Israel, it has always been a program or a campaign to ensure that they are able to attack those nuclear sites and also some military installations with the aim of sending a message that Israel will not tolerate Iran having nuclear capability. And that is why President Trump didn't sign. But we now saw earlier on in his X account that is being transferred the information from the Truth Social, where he posted that people in Tehran must evacuate Tehran. And this is an indication that something is happening behind the scenes, even though America has denied that it is involved in supporting Israel on these attacks.
So on the one hand, Sophie talks about Iran's nuclear capability. On the other hand, it is, of course, as stated rather clearly by the Israelis, that this is about regime change in Iran as well. And one would imagine that this would be something that the world leaders should be discussing.
They will. Many have called for cessation of hostilities. We know that you had a situation where there has been attempts to support those who are against the current government or the regime of Iran. And therefore, this moment presents an opportunity for those who always attempted to revolt against the current regime. And therefore, Israel is hoping that this will be the case, where while they are attacking Iran, on the other hand, you have people rising up in Iran against the current regime. It hasn't happened for now, but you can see that there's a push towards that, and there's hope that perhaps this will hold and there will be a revolt. For now, it looks like Iran has been able also to hit back at Israel, and therefore this is causing confusion even to those who would want to rise against the current regime. And therefore, Israel itself is not sure in terms of what's going to happen and what will be the final outcome of these attacks. But that's exactly what Israel and America want.
And of course, looking at the targeted strikes there on Tehran, and as you mentioned earlier, Sophie, residents told to evacuate, the concern there was that people were saying they don't know where to go. And also, we saw that strike on the Iranian state broadcaster. And, you know, again, what does that signify?
As you remember very well, in Gaza, a similar announcement was made in Gaza, where people were being forced to move out of Gaza. And on their way out, they were also attacked. the same call is being made now to Iranians to get out of Tehran. And you have more than 10 million Iranians living in Tehran. And if they have to leave Tehran now, where are they going to go in terms of where they can be safe? And that doesn't mean that much as this call is made, the suspension of attacks, Israel is continuing to launch attacks, and therefore they can be caught in a crossfire while trying to leave the area. And therefore, that is why many people are saying that a call for Iranians to leave Tehran now, 10 million people, it is an unreasonable call. And that's an indication that something is brewing, much as President Trump is trying to deny the fact that America is involved in saying that American troops in the Middle East are on standby to protect their bases and their interests. But clearly there's a strong suspicion that you have the U.S. hands helping Israel to continue with the attacks.
Well, Tehran have come out saying that unequivocally, but also, Sophie, we know that the U.S. president is set to depart the G7 summit a day earlier to return to Washington over that situation in the Middle East. But then where does this leave the rest of the leaders of the G7 who are gathered there along with the other invited leaders from other countries and the EU, but also other major players? You take, for example, a country like Turkey, who've been trying to mediate between Russia and Ukraine, and also a country like Russia. You know, how is all of this likely to play out?
Turkey announced yesterday that it will strengthen its missile capability as part of deterrent. And many countries such as China, Russia have also condemned Israel's attack on Iran. In terms of the meeting of the G7 in Canada, it will continue today, the Reach Out summit where other leaders have been invited, and the meeting will continue without President Trump. President Trump left few hours ago, which is early hours of this morning after the dinner. And perhaps on arrival in Washington, he will share some light in terms of where to from here. But the meeting is going to continue the second day of the summit. It was expected that President Trump is going to be a spoiler during this G7 meeting, as it happened with the last G7 meeting that he attended, where America had its own views in terms of geopolitics and the global economy and the direction that the world should take and fighting for interests of America. So it was expected that he may not agree on many issues with his G7 counterparts, because he had already made a pronouncement earlier on in terms of signing of the executive orders on trade and investment, on issues of geopolitics, pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. And therefore, clearly the agenda of the summit didn't really suit the Americans in terms of the expected outcomes. And therefore, it was no surprise, I guess, for many people when he left early, but citing the current tension between Israel and Iran. We know, however, that there were many issues that he was not going to agree to, and that is why Canada had prepared itself in terms of not coming up with a communique, because there was not going to be an agreement on some of the issues with the United States of America.
Well, thanks so much. And that is SABC News International editor Sophie Mokoena.